Welcome to Attention Needed, where we dive deep into the world of artificial intelligence and its implications for our future. I'm Victor Bian, Chief Operating Officer of HydroX AI and host of this show. Today, we're honored to welcome Roland Cloutier, a globally recognized leader in cybersecurity and digital risk management. Roland has served as the Global Chief Security Officer for TikTok and led groundbreaking efforts to safeguard one of the world's most dynamic digital platforms. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Roland's leadership has shaped the security strategies for major organizations like ADP and Dell EMC. In this episode, we'll explore the ever-evolving challenges and opportunities in securing AI-driven platforms, from building robust cybersecurity frameworks for global tech giants to ensuring trust and transparency in an AI-powered world. Roland brings unparalleled expertise to this conversation. We hope you find this discussion as insightful, as impactful as we do. Hey, Roland. Nice to have you on this show. Are you ready to start?
Victor, let's do it.
Awesome. So as a veteran in the security space and also the former CISO of TikTok, can you tell us how you've seen the landscape of traditional security evolve over the years? And what are some of the foundational principles that still apply today?
Yeah, broad question, Victor. I think let's start with the principles. I think get back to the Rainbow series for those of you that are as old as me and understand what that means. But it's all about AAA, right? It's about authentication, access, authorization, auditing. Like you can do like 15 A's. There's a bunch of stuff in there. It's the basics. It starts with transparency, understanding what you're defending, putting appropriate controls in place, being able to monitor it and respond and start that all over again, right? So that whole defend, detect, respond, recover kind of methodology. None of that changes, even with AI. I think what's interesting, the applicability of major changes comes obviously with the cloud era. I mean, that was the last big jump, right? So if you think about what are the big jumps, internet was the big jump, and then cloud compute came a big jump, and now AI comes a even greater jump. And we always talk about the 100x fold from the last and the speed at which it's being delivered. It's all true. But there are some basic concepts that are important to understand. So for instance, in AI, built on cloud infrastructure, and there are certain things you can do. Now, if you look at like the MITRE attack path with regards to Atlas and how they look at defending AI pipelines and capabilities, there are certainly things that are not, like insertion defense wasn't a thing, right? And all the other types of issues you have to think about with an AI to go from platform assurance to AI assurance to data manipulation management, even to bias output defense. All of those have really different technologies that you have to put in place to be able to defend, detect, recover, and respond. But the majority of that is built on the technical infrastructures that we can protect today. And that's a lot of the things that people should be looking at.
That's very cool. So how do you think about, I guess, these principles? You already talked a little bit about this, right? Like every paradigm shift, every new technology that comes out that fundamentally shifts how people consume, how people, buy, how people, use technology. This is going to create a new paradigm. So maybe tell us a little bit, like, let's drill a little bit further into this generative AI space, for example. Like, how would you think this new evolving field should, let's say, draw a page from this book that the traditional security space has gone through?
Well, let's talk about being able to isolate and understand the delivery of the capabilities and the technology. That takes a unique effort and consideration. And whether it was cloud, and we were talking about container defense and understanding onboarding into cloud environments and the capabilities of the simplicity, what we say now, simplicity of building images and all the problems that came with that. How did we say that is cloud? We have to kind of do the same with AI. What is AI and how you define it within your environment? And I'm talking about from code, to production and output. That's a very broad span. And so I think we have to take a pragmatic look at first making sure our practitioners are capable of understanding what that means, meaning we're going to have to train people, right? You don't see a lot of AI security experts graduating from their post grad, in the last couple of years. That's a next 2 years to 10 years, a whole new different program that higher ed is going to have to put in place to be able to ensure that STEM programs are delivering what we need to market. So from the people aspects all the way to the next generation technology. So you see, just a handful of companies out there doing things from LLM AI firewalls to defend enterprise businesses to the in-depth totality of AI pipeline defense, that organizations are looking at, to folks just focusing on bias defense or just focusing on data pipeline management for AI, right? So we're going to have to learn what are those capabilities we have over time, and now we have to build and more our security programs to be able to engage in that. And here's a for example. So you get a new technology that helps you defend against AI. Well, what does an output look like when you're monitoring that goes into your SOC, CERT, Fusion Center, whatever you have? What does your responder do with it? They're used to dealing with malware, ransomware, what have you. All of a sudden, they're getting alerts out of an AI defense system. What does it mean? What do they do with it? So it's an end-to-end thought process that security leaders are really going to have to think about. How does it impact each part of their operation? And we won't even get into operational risk management, in the training that has to happen there. But how do we work with our practitioners that deliver controls, our practitioners that monitor systems, and practitioners that recover the environment through our resilience efforts? All of that, I think, is an important part of how we have to do this, and how we did it with cloud, and how we did it when the internet came up, and our business then got built on the internet and migrated to cloud and so on and so forth. We had to change our people, process, and technology. Same thing, Victor.
That's very cool. Do you think these are kind of the pillars, the building pillars of a framework? Typically, people like to think about a framework, a sophisticated framework that can be applied in the security world. Do you think those are kind of the building blocks of that?
Well, I think, they've been teaching people, process, technology since I think they created the wheel, in different contexts. So sure, but frameworks are important. I don't think we should say, as long as you stick to people, process, and technology, it'll be fine. I don't think so. I think you're going to have to understand the implications of frameworks that help you prioritize, focus, and migrate to a lifecycle capability of managing and defending, this next generation technology. I think, I mentioned MITRE Atlas, one of the first ones that went out. NIST has their new AI CSF model on the risk side, which is a great framework. Frameworks help us educate and provide a path by which people can understand the necessities, capabilities, and operations. It gives us pathways for certification and accreditation. It gives regulators and legislators an understanding of what they can and can't do. So, yes, the world gets down to people, process, and technology. Security, mission-focused people have to defend, detect, respond, and recover. But I think frameworks are the way that we need to build our capabilities into true existence.
How far do you think we're away from it, in terms of generative AI or risk management framework or kind of security-driven framework?
I think NIST has done a good job. I think the EU, their supplemental change to some of their risk directives they've given around cyber that have attached to AI is not a bad model. How far are we? Some would say we're there, because for what we can do today, you have the ability to use these risk formats to do it. But let's be realistic. We're in the early days of LLM. We're like year 2 production instances of LLM integration into the majority business. Other people have had LLMs for years, slightly modified, and they certainly had machine learning and true AI capabilities for probably near a decade. But generative LLM type capabilities are just exploding. And so the question is, how fast is that going to go? And are we going to see quantum changes in generative AI capabilities based on things that are developing today that this risk process won't change? Here's what I'll say: 80-20, 70-30. It's there enough for you to be able to start helping your business understand its risk posture and portfolio to be able to make better business decisions than they could a year ago.
Do you necessarily think risk management or security control can curb the speed at which innovation is happening? For a lot of leaders, especially for disruptive technology such as, generative AI, how should they think about balancing innovation versus, making the system more stable, stabilizing risk control, risk management? How should they approach this balancing?
Well, I'm a risk adverse guy, right? I do this for a living. So, but I'm also a business enabler. I think a lot of the reason I love this job is I could get to do things that allow businesses to run fast and be competitive. I'm a competitive person too. Victor, what I'll say is that I'm trying to be polite about risk management. There's a place for risk management, especially in regulated entities around the globe, where it can certainly inform at which the speed an organization needs to go to protect the interests of that regulated entity, and whether that's critical infrastructure or public companies or financial services, whatever it may be, that ensures the dependability, defensibility, and the availability of the systems that are regulated. I think it's kind of like slowing down the iPhones in the early 2000s. That wasn't happening. Didn't matter what risk management was going to do. People wanted it. Cloud computing, when organizations understood how they can do distributed compute environments globally to get their products in time to market faster into the regions they were operating, like, it's just going to happen. And so is AI. And quite frankly, as many boards are pushing their organizations, how are you going to remain competitive and reduce costs in the age of AI when all your other competitors are doing it, and you're still doing, I don't know, call center management with 10,000 people when you can reduce that, by 10x. So they're getting the pressure to be a better technical organization, and risk management is there to inform. It's not to prevent. It's to inform and to assure. So that I'm not a risk hater, but what I'm saying is that risk is an informational component to leadership and decision making in a decision support environment. It's not there to be a gas pedal or a brake. So when used properly, I think business can live with both a good risk posture and their ability to accelerate.
That's super helpful. I think that's something I believe the community will find very insightful as well. Let's maybe go down a little bit deeper into risks in generative AI. I guess, based on your knowledge, what are some of the particular risks in generative AI, particularly in generative AI, that you think deserve a lot more attention than it's gaining?
I mean, what's the big one is disclosure of information that shouldn't be disclosed, or the access to information, use of information that is either regulatory, legislative, or contractually obligations to organizations, and get them into some pretty big trouble, right? Like, it's why data pipeline and data defense and access assurance are so important in the defensibility of great generative AI. I mean, there's just on the practical sense, what can you and can you not use and like at a simple model. If someone implements generative AI capabilities into their organization, even if it's across their own data set, but they don't do it right, you do something silly like, enable HR access, and you ask, give me the salaries of blah. And he goes out and collects all that information and brings it back to, a junior staffer who now has all the information of the business. That's a silly kind of example, but it's the same thing. Data is a threat. or the output of inappropriate access or use of informational assets, from the simplistic thing like that to the most advanced thing, such as violating laws in different jurisdictions. I mean, look at the United States. It's a republic built of 51, 52 different jurisdictions that have entirely different laws, right? In many cases. Now you add in the 30,000 new AI and data laws around the globe that you're operating as an international business. What does that mean? We can talk about bias, and we can talk about hallucination, and negative, negative validated output. And we can talk about all those things. All comes down to data. So data is the biggest threat, and it's the biggest enabler at the same time.
That's super helpful. Do you see a need for new risk assessment tools or, monitoring
Oh, hell
tools?
yeah. I mean, I mean, all the components of what generative AI is doing, and then the implications of the impact of that downstream residual impact of whatever that asset or capability to the organization is, and to the markets that they serve, and to the type of business they're in. I mean, the FAIR model is not going to get you there. Like a simplified risk tool on, you know, issue, incident, risk, measurement, quantification. And oh, by the way, this is done this is done at the speed of light and the speed of, development. So this has to be instrumented into the pipeline, like risk management, kind of like the way we were getting to it with application defense, code defense, within product development and cloud environments at speed, into the engineering lifecycle is important. And we've been doing great there. Now we're going to do machine generated code, at time integration via API into existing ecosystems. Like that stuff, it has to happen while it's happening in order for it to make any sense. Or you're going to be doing a risk management on something that happened 2 days ago, which might as well be 100 years ago in this space. So yeah, I think there has to be a living, breathing, just-in-time capability, within AI pipelines, architectures, and delivery infrastructures that provide an informed view of risk in a more automated way.
That's very cool. How do you think, you talked a lot about, building out this pipeline and also like how people should approach this in a more sophisticated and more thoughtful fashion. How do you think this, applies to startups or kind of companies that are trying to move faster and don't necessarily have all the building blocks or even experience in this field? How do you think this differentiates larger companies who are more experienced at this or who probably knows about the previous landscape and they're trying to go this direction? How do you think about this differentiates?
I mean, it's like anything else with a smaller company. They're going to have all of the assets, resources, and capabilities in house to be able to do it. Maybe you're a 29-person startup, or even if 1,000-person, company. It doesn't, you're not going to have a 50-person AI security team, like a GCIFI bank, is going to have, along with their other 4,000 practitioners that are depending. There's going to be some reality. So here's what I tell companies: first and foremost, have a plan. Right? Here's what we're going to do, and here's what we're not going to do. If you do have a security organization, make sure that they're involved in the discussion and the capabilities and in the direction. Find yourself a partner. So find yourself, whether it's a technology partner or a professional services partner or something like that, that has access to AI technologies to help you, and use them as necessary, and utilize the capabilities that these large providers. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're in a hyperscaler and they are providing AI technology, cloud infrastructure, they're building tools just as fast, if not faster, than the security industry, right? Embrace it, and use the capabilities they have. And if you're in a specific industry, or if have a very specific technology you use, bring in the right capabilities to do just that portion of it. You don't have to have a dedicated security organization or a dedicated your own data centers to be able to do this. What you need to have is a plan, someone accountable within your organization that's responsible for making it work, and the financial responsibility as part of your product or part of your operations to make sure you fund the security and the appropriate security necessary for the type of work you're doing. And that'll get you a long way.
Very helpful. I guess my next question is a little bit more kind of looking into the future of the security in generative AI. Do you see, like, where do you think this is going? Like, we talked about where it is today. Where do you think this is going? If you have
Well, we're using it as like consumer stuff today, right? We're using it to help our businesses reduce call centers, get closer to the client, help us do machine generated code to get products to market faster. We're creating new digital ecosystems that get work done instead of stupid work that machines can do rather than people doing it, so people can go focus on more important things. That's what we're doing today. From a practitioner standpoint, we're going to be using it the same thing. Like, I mean, think of it. Most organizations cover roughly 50 to 60% of total code evaluation environment. This is just a single view, right? Like, that's one part of 21 different disciplines in security. So why? Because we're doing code. It takes people to run tests, against it and drive it. All of a sudden, you got all these new products. You got machine generated code. So now there's this mountain of code. You're going to go from 60% capability down to about 20% pretty quick. So I think AI is going to be one of those things where we're going to be do verification, validation, and assurance, right? That's just one beautiful thing. I see it as things won't even be able to go into production unless it's past those tests, and it's AI that's going to provide the testing, verification, instrumentation within the engineering pipeline, and then validation before it goes into prod. So it's just going to be a wonderful thing. We can let businesses run real fast. Think of it in the sense of financial transaction analysis. Today in financial companies, you have people that have to do anti-money laundering. You have to do people that have to do money movement defense. You have anti-fraud teams, and they kind of all operate in their own silos. Why? Right? Now all of a sudden, I'm going to have a capability that looks across all of my technical defense infrastructure that protects these environments, and do transaction analysis, and do fraud analysis, and do it at 98% efficiency with a zero manual people doing that, and humans only in the loop to validate it. And how fast can my business run then? Like, these are some really amazing things we're going to be able to do on the security side, where we talk about doing post-implementation controls validation. Why? Don't allow it into production if it's not there, and we can do it faster than we did it through some ticketing system that had a security architect or someone look at it. It's going to be amazing. I'm really jazzed by the opportunity that a lot of this new technology is going to give us.
As someone who has led large-scale security efforts, such as TikTok, what advice would you give emerging leaders in the AI space who wants to focus on security and safety?
Know your customer and know their pain points. Right? Like, you can invent something really cool. If it's useless, it won't get adopted. So what are where are people spending their most money? What is causing the longest delays and pain with their business? What's the hardest things to solve and why? Go there, right? Like, I know it sounds simplistic, but that's really important. The next thing is focus on operational integration. You're still going to have to implement that technology into an organization that has a bunch of technologies in this digital defense ecosystem that they run. And that's not going to change overnight. Like, that model is going to take some time. So if you want to integrate it, figure out how operationally it will be used. Simple is super important, but focus on need and focus on how it can be most operationally impactful, implemented, and successful in the shortest amount of time. And I think you're in good order.
Yeah. Trust me, those are really simple words, but at the same time, it's also very hard to achieve, actually. It's very hard to do really well, but completely agree. Completely agree. I love to usually wrapping up the show. I usually like to ask my guests to share one thing they're most excited about generative AI, this new technology, and similarly, one big concern they have. So, again, I would love to pose that question to you, Roland. Maybe let's start with one thing that you're most excited about, and I'd love to hear your biggest concern on this.
So many things. I can only pick one that I'm excited about, huh?
Only.
I'm excited at the opportunity for technology to really finally catch up to the pace of business and in decisioning. Right? Like, I mean, we've had decision support platforms, and we've had this, and but to be able to provide truly informed capabilities at the time of decisioning, and not just like, give me a report on this, but an issue or problem, at least in our space, happens. How do I collectively understand external attributes, internal attributes, critical things I need to understand, and provide that in a way to a crime fighting digital defender in instantaneous before they can even think about it, is absolutely amazing. It gives us that upper hand to really defend where it's just been this scale of they spend more money, bad guys spend more money in new technologies and get around it, where we're actually going to be able to really, I think, get ahead where we haven't been able to before. So that's what I'm most excited about. We're going to be able to do our jobs better. And businesses and the economy is going to be better for it.
What are your concerns, or what is your biggest concern?
Really, just one?
Well, that's good to know. Like, you have many concerns, but let's hear your biggest.
Well, obviously, I just said we're going to be able to defend, but this really lowers the threshold for entry into dangerous cyber criminal and terroristic acts. Think about it, right? At least you had to have someone with some base level of intelligence and technical understanding if they wanted to, be, hacker, black hat, whatever fancy term you want to call it, but a bad guy doing digital harm. All of a sudden, they're going to be able to use generative AI to create programs to attack the company they don't like, to attack people they don't like. And it's a broad spectrum. It's not just technical infrastructure defense we're talking about. I mean, it's implications in social, it's implications in influence operations by nation states. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that the collected access to information and the applicability of AI and generative AI to those assets can do by bad guys. So the skyrocketing of potential negative impact criminal events in the digital scape is, there's a reality there that we're going to have to deal with. And it truly lowers the bar to entry, for those bad guys. So that's a concern. It's an important, valid concern that we all have to look at.
I can totally see that, because we're talking about democratization of good, but also at the same time, democratization of evil or harm. So technology has that double-edged sword that we always like to talk about. But,
always.
Well, it's great having you, Roland. I mean, we shared a lot, talked a lot. We'd love to invite in the future to have you come back on the show and revisit this conversation of generative AI security and safety.
All right, Victor, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.